Hello students and welcome to the week 6 video. We're going to dive right in talking about the research paragraph assignment, but before I do that, I just want to mention that either this week or next week, you should be receiving an email with a link to your course evaluations. You should get one for every course that you're taking. And I just want to encourage you to take a moment or two and do that evaluation for each of your professors. We really appreciate the feedback. For a course like this, these are developed by a team of people and they like the feedback so that they can make adjustments to the course as they see necessary. So please do take just a couple of minutes and do that for us so that we can make our courses better for students that come behind you. Okay, we're going to go right into Blackboard. All right, and into the week 6 folder. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a moment and we'll talk about this portion in the folder. This, of course, is where you will submit the assignment when you're done and the rubric is attached. So as I always do, I will encourage you to be very familiar with the rubric because it's what I use to grade. And so there won't be any surprises if you know exactly what I'm looking for, and then you can make sure that you do all of those things to the best of your ability. You can ask me questions about them. You also have a list of topics. You will choose one of these. And the reason these topics were chosen, first, we hope that you'll be interested in at least one of them, but these are also topics where you should be able to find a lot of sources in the library databases that you learned about during week 5. And so there should be no shortage of resources and sources to cite in your paragraph if you choose one of these. All right, and then there are a couple of other resources here that the course developers added about research writing and paragraph structure. And then I added a few things myself. So the first is based on my many years and many sessions of experience teaching this class, reading these paragraphs and seeing what students tend to do and what issues they tend to have. So we'll talk about the do's and don'ts of the research paragraph. So for the do's, you're going to write no more and no less than one complete paragraph. It may seem odd. This is a 1-paragraph assignment. It may seem too easy, but there's a lot to think about as you're doing this assignment. You know, you got to think about plagiarism. You got to think about your sources, MOA formatting. How do I integrate my sources well? Make sure your grammar is as good as it can be. So there are a lot of things to juggle here. You have enough on your hands without worrying about writing more than a paragraph. And this is really just meant to be an exercise to show me that you know how to do this so that you can move on to other classes and be successful when you have to do this in a longer piece of writing. That's why it's so short here. Okay. Do use 2 academic sources, preferably from the Regent Library databases. Now, that's not to say that you cannot use scripture. Of course you can. You can use definitions if that helps you. You know, if you feel like you really need to define a term so that your writing is more fully understood, wonderful. But that definition and that scripture are not going to count as your 2 academic sources. I think in one of the announcements I mentioned not to use Wikipedia. That's a given. Okay. You know, if there's something great in Wikipedia, find the source that that information comes from and go to that source and see if it's reliable and use that one instead of using Wikipedia. Write a topic sentence that's broad enough to introduce the entire paragraph. I'm going to show you an example of that in a little bit. Integrate your sources seamlessly. And again, I have a resource for that. Format the heading, header, title, spacing, parenthetical citations, and works cited page according to MLA guidelines. Now, this is going to cause some heartache for some people. I'm here to answer questions. I have resources below that are meant to help you. So hopefully by the time you read over everything, you at least feel somewhat comfortable, even if not super confident. But this is a great way to use the Writing Center. You know, they're pretty much experts at MLA formatting in there, so they can help you with any question that you have. Problem is, if you don't have an appointment by now, it's probably going to be very difficult to get one, but it never hurts to try if you feel that you would benefit from that. Okay, now for the don'ts. The first one is very obvious. Do not plagiarize. Many of you chose to write on this topic for the week 5 discussion, which is great because that means that it is fresh in your minds and you're familiar with everything. So you know what plagiarism is. Some of you may not be aware, though, that there is such a thing as self-plagiarism, which means that you write an assignment for one class and then either that same semester, or maybe you wrote it a couple of years ago, it doesn't matter when you wrote it, you submit it for another class. That is technically plagiarism, and Regent doesn't tolerate that either if we find out that a student has done it. So one assignment for one class and then it's done. Okay, so we can't submit one assignment for multiple classes, even if a lot of time has passed in between. Okay. Use a dictionary. Don't use a dictionary definition and a Bible verse with no other sources and expect to get a passing grade. If you look at the rubric, a large chunk of points comes from using academic sources and then how you integrate them. If you haven't used them, I can't give you points on how you've integrated them, which means you lose points on 2 major areas of the rubric. So just be aware and use those good academic sources that are required. Do not use second person pronouns such as you, your, yours. I tried to mark on all of the 5 paragraph essays if I saw that, but if you didn't go in and click on the rubric and read through the comments and then look at the highlights and the comments on your essay itself, you may have missed that. Hopefully, if you haven't done that, you'll go back and do it, because some of those comments may help you on this assignment. Don't use expressions like I think, I believe, in my opinion, in conclusion. The opinion expressions really do serve to weaken your writing, and you sound a lot less confident when you use those expressions. Best just to leave them off. And then the in conclusion, every assignment you write for this class is incredibly brief, and even in longer assignments, in conclusion it's just been done so many times. So let's try to be more creative than that. And, trust your instructors that when we get to the last paragraph of whatever it is that you've written, we pretty much know it's your conclusion. So you don't need to use that trope to introduce that last paragraph. And finally, don't forget to proofread using the writing lab, the grammar resources I shared during week 4. Remember, there's a folder at the bottom of the course content page under all of those weekly folders where I shared a few grammar and punctuation resources. And you also have Grammarly Premium. If you have not yet downloaded Grammarly Premium and I'm giving you comments about your grammar, remember, that's one of the first announcements that I posted before class even started. The help desk is there to help you download it if you don't know how, but it's free. And once you have it for as long as you own your computer. So I really do recommend that you download it if you haven't already. Likewise, if you have not yet downloaded Microsoft Office, which includes Microsoft Word, that is another free resource for you. So make sure that you get the help you need, download these resources because you're going to need them for every class. I think I've mentioned this before, but the grading screen in Blackboard, if you haven't uploaded your document as a Word file, I'm really limited in the feedback that I can give. So it really is to your advantage to make sure that you're downloading these free resources. Okay. So let's talk about integrating resources. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint. I couldn't figure out a way to embed this without making it a separate video, which I really didn't want to do. So we'll make do with it being embedded as a PowerPoint. And here, it's going to take me a second to open this and then share the new screen, so bear with me. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my PowerPoint. Now it's going to come up as a raw PowerPoint file, but if you come down to the bottom of the screen, there's this little icon that looks like a movie projector. And if you click on that, it'll show you the presentation as a slideshow. All right, and another shout out to my friend Mrs. Naki, who also shared her punctuation resources with me so that I could create that presentation. All right, let's talk about how to embed quotations or integrate, you'll hear it both ways, your quotations into your writing. So whenever you quote material, you need to transition into it. You really don't want to just drop quotations into your writing without some context of where it's from, just to help your reader out. All right, those transitions help quoted material flow naturally and coherently. For example, Smith, a longtime instructor at Clown College, asserts that 90% of people are afraid of clowns. So you'll note that I not only told you the author's name, but I told you something about him, because if you don't know who Smith is, then that leaves you open to wondering, okay, well, why should I believe this person? Why is this person credible? So when you add that little bit of information about the author that you're quoting, it helps increase your credibility because you're showing why your source is a credible, reliable source. When written properly, the reader should not be able to hear where the quotation marks are when the sentence is read aloud. A properly embedded quotation creates a seamless transition from the background information to the quoted material. When done poorly, the transition is choppy, incomplete, and/or predictable. For example, this is shown by 90% of people are afraid of clowns. So the key is when you're reading this aloud, can you hear that awkwardness where it goes from your writing to the quotation, or is it done seamlessly? A good practice, even when you're not just talking about quotations, when you're talking about writing in general, it's always a good practice to write, put it away for a little while, and then come back to it and read it aloud to yourself. Our brain plays tricks on us. And if we write and then immediately read it to ourselves, we're going to read it the way we think we wrote it, but not necessarily the way we actually did write it. So getting that distance is really important, which means you have to plan ahead so that you have time to do that. But you really will hear and see things that you didn't realize were there. It happens to me every time I write something. I find things that, oh gosh, I didn't even realize I typed that. It's amazing how that works. Okay, so just make sure when you go back and read aloud, can you hear those places where you've quoted material, or does it just all flow seamlessly? Okay, another thing is that you may have to change words within your quote so that the sentence is grammatically correct and coherent. So there are two ways that you can do this. One, I'm sure you've heard of. The other, you may not know, but you may have seen it, but didn't know what it meant. So we can use brackets and ellipses. And I'll show you examples of both of these. But a bracket shows where you've made a change in a word for the sake of grammatical correctness and the flow of the sentence. And then of course, an ellipsis shows where you may have cut out words. You know, these are very brief pieces of writing that you're doing. Even in longer essays, you don't want quotations to take over. It's usually good practice to keep your quotes as short as possible, because again, this is about your writing, your ideas, just supported with other people's thoughts and that source material. So we don't want to drop these long quotations in. I know when I was in school, that was a great strategy for increasing the length of our writing, but it actually kind of works against you. Okay, for example, Smith's research draws attention to the idea that media and culture have a pervasive influence on society. So in the original, the verb was draw and not draws, but I added the S because it wouldn't be grammatically correct unless I did. So I put a bracket around the S to show you that that's been added. And then the ellipsis shows that there was more to the quote, but I cut it out because I didn't want the quote to get too long. So just a quick recap. Give background and context for your quoted material. Maybe think about what's happening, who's speaking, what are the credentials of the speaker. Only use the most important part of the quote. Read your sentence aloud to make sure that you can't hear the quotation marks, and use brackets and ellipses as needed to indicate changes. Okay, so that's my very brief snapshot of how to embed or integrate sources seamlessly. especially when you're quoting. Now you can paraphrase as well, which means you take an author's words and you put them into your own words. You still have to cite your source. I should still see a parenthetical citation at the end of that sentence, or you're going to introduce the author's name somewhere in the sentence, and then I can look at the author's name and go match it up with the source on the works cited. And then that source is absolutely going to have to be on the works cited. So some students think, oh, if I'm not quoting directly, I don't have to cite the source. Whenever you use information that is not firsthand knowledge, you have to cite the source that it came from. So just be aware of that too. Better to oversight than to undercite. All right. Let's go back to Blackboard. Okay. So that's kind of the overview of how to do it. And I'm going to show you an example. Forgive my silly topics. I just think sometimes it's easier to understand how to do something if the topic isn't so serious and it's super easy to understand what you're reading. And then you can really focus on the technique of how to embed. Okay, so I've given you the tips again here because you cannot read them too many times. So this is a paragraph that I wrote with just a silly sample topic. And I just realized I have to share this as well, or you can't see what I'm talking about. Okay, so there are those tips at the top once again. Just a silly paragraph that I wrote, a silly topic about why people might favor cats over dogs. And so this would just be one paragraph in a hypothetical longer essay about all of the reasons why people might like to own a cat more than a dog. So this paragraph was about caring for the animal. And so I mentioned briefly, you want to make sure you write a topic sentence that's broad enough to encompass the entire paragraph. So I'm going to talk about various aspects of caring for cats versus dogs. So my topic sentence needs to be a general statement about the care of these animals. So many people favor cats because they don't require as much care as dogs. And then everything that I put in the paragraph is going to go back to the care of the animals. So my topic sentence works for the entire paragraph. And then you can see I've highlighted where I embedded source material. So the first one is according to the American Veterinary Medical Association. And again, it's credible. You know, this is a nationwide, well-known, well-respected association. So we know that this is a credible source. According to the AVMA, dogs need between 30 minutes and 2 hours of exercise a day, in addition to outdoor trips for potty time. And my source is Jones, so I have put that at the end of the sentence in parentheses. That is my parenthetical citation that I mentioned earlier in the different aspects that require MLA formatting. And as you know, if you haven't dealt with other formatting guides, there's APA, Chicago, Turabian, there are scads of different ways to do this. And every single one does the citations a little bit differently. So it's just something you have to pay attention to. And I think MLA is the easiest one to use. So that's the good news here. But again, I'm going to show you some resources for MLA formatting. So if you're looking at me going parenthetical who, it's fine. I'm going to give you some help on that, okay? Lower down, I did a paraphrase instead of a quote. The least expensive kennels charge at least $25 a night, and that doesn't include playtime or special treats that most would consider necessary dog care. And that is from an author named Smith. And so I've done my parenthetical citation there. These are both online resources, which is why there's no page number. But if these were from a book with a page number, then just after the author's last name, you would put with no comma, just a space, the page number or the range of page numbers. So it could be page 24, or it could be 24 to 36 with literally the numerals written with a little dash in between. We don't have to put an abbreviation for page. It's just Jones 24. Okay. All right. So That's my little example of how we've embedded in context in a paragraph. So again, let me know if you have questions about anything. I'm going to go back to Blackboard once again, and we'll look at our next resources. Okay, so let's move on to the MLA resources. Now, these two PDFs are straight from the Regent Library website, and I'm going to show you this as well. I've given you this link to their MLA resources because there's more there, but I didn't want to copy everything into Blackboard based on what you may or may not need. So the thing about this link on my computer, I don't know if it's the same on yours, but on my computer, I have to right click and open in a new window or tab. So just be aware if you're having trouble opening that link, that might be why. Okay, so this brings you to the Regent Library Citation Management for MLA formatting. And then from here, you can go to the Writing Center resources, and I'll show you that because it actually is a little bit tricky to find once you're on that page. It'll also take you to one of my favorite online resources for MLA formatting, which is the Online Writing Lab at Purdue University. They just have a top-notch writing lab and share so many resources online. I've been using that one for decades now. And then there's EasyBib, which I love that it's on here because some people are so snooty about citation generators. I love them. When I was in college, I had to open my little handbook. It was called the Little Green Handbook, and it had a green cover. And I had to go, okay, I have a source with 3 authors and it's a book. And I would have to flip through, okay, show me all the types of books. And then, okay, here's the one with 3 authors. And I'd have to flip through and find all the information about the book and fill in and make sure I had my period and my comma and my colon right on there. This is so much easier. So take the help. It's here to make your life easier. The beauty of EasyBib, and I'll show you this in a moment, is if you have something from a website, you can just plug in the URL and it'll generate the citation for you. The databases, though, generally have the citation already done. So that's the great thing about the databases. And then you're just copying and pasting, making sure the formatting is correct. I'll show you that as well. Okay, so before I forget, I'm going to go to this page, and this is a writing lab page. My voice is getting very gravelly because I'm tired. Okay, and like I said, it's kind of buried in here, so that's why I'm showing you. I think it's under formatting, is that right? Yes. Okay, so you expand what's under formatting by clicking on the little plus sign. I'll do that. So, it's a plus sign. When I click on it, it becomes a minus sign. And the first one is APA. We don't want that. You have to make sure you scroll down and get to the correct one. So now MLA, which stands for Modern Language Association, these are all of the different resources available. So there's, we're between guides. This is the other frustrating thing. They keep updating and they'll make these little tiny changes. For a long time, you didn't have to include a URL in each citation on the works cited. Now they've gone back to where we want the URL. So honestly, I really don't care if you choose 8th or 9th. There are more resources still up here for the 8th update. So just go with that one if you're more comfortable. But there's a sample paper, which I'm going to show you, formatting checklist, all about how to do your citations, and then just the basics. So depending on your comfort level, you can use all of these, you can use none of them, but they are here for you if you need them. Okay, let me go back then to Blackboard. Okay, I'm going to show you the sample paper. And the beauty of this is that they have notes all over it. So they don't just show you how to do it, they give you some more explanation. So when it comes to your header, which in MLA is just your last name, a space, and the page number, they show you what that should look like. Now, Word doesn't always make it simple. I think I may at the end of this video, of course you can click off anytime. I think I may go into Microsoft Word and show you how to do that for those of you who don't know, because it can be really frustrating if you're not sure how to do that. So let me write a note to myself. How to do a header. We'll do that before the video ends. Okay, And then again, your heading, I don't know why we have to have two things with such similar names because it just makes everything more confusing. But it's always going to be the same. Your name, my name, course name, date. I don't care if the date is in this format, 20 November 2019, or if you do November 20th, 2019, you could do 11/20/19. I don't care. It's fine. As long as the date is there on the fourth line. Note that absolutely everything is double spaced in MLA. So everything in your heading is double spaced. From the heading to the title, just a double space, no extra spacing needed. From the title to the essay itself, another double space. And a shortcut that I learned a long time ago that saves me a lot of time, if you hold the control key and hit 2, it will double space the document for you. If you've already started typing, you have to highlight what you've already typed and then hold control and hit 2. But if you haven't started typing yet, you can just hold control, hit 2, and it'll double space everything for you. And you won't have to worry about going back and doing that later. Okay, now, some other little things, and it tells you this. The title, of course, goes right after the heading. And you'll note here, there is some italicizing only because there's a title there. And in MLA formatting, titles of long works like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight are italicized. If you're handwriting, you underline it, but when you're typing, you italicize. That's the only reason you see italics in this title. Otherwise, the title doesn't have any special formatting. It's not in a larger font. It's not in a different color font. It's not bold. It's not underlined. It's not italicized unless an element of the title requires italics. A lot of people want to give their titles special formatting, but that's actually incorrect in MLA formatting. Okay. And so it'll continue to give you some little notes. It'll talk about your parenthetical. So here's an example of a parenthetical citation with an author's name and a page number. And again, there's no comma, there's no abbreviation for page. It's just last name, page number. Now, sometimes you won't have an author and you'll have to use a title instead, and that's fine. I'm going to scroll down to the works cited because that's really the next important thing. Other than, oh, this is good. This is a really great resource, y'all. They have good information in here. So what you can see in this sentence, they've actually told you the author's name in the body of the writing. So you don't need to repeat the author's name in the parenthetical, just the page number if there is one. If there's no page number, if this is an online resource, then once you've mentioned the author in the body of your writing, you don't need to do a parenthetical. So that's a little exception to the rule of those parentheticals. All right, I'm going to scroll way down to the works cited page. This looks scary because it's incredibly long. Remember, one paragraph for this assignment. Okay, here we go to the works cited. Now, the works cited will always begin on a new page. So in this case, you're going to have one page for your writing. Usually, I can't think of a time when a student has written a paragraph that's longer than one page for this assignment. So your works cited will begin at the top of page 2. It always begins on the first clean page after you're done with your essay or paragraph or whatever it is that you're writing. The title is works cited. It is not references. It is not bibliography. Those are for other formatting guides. In MLA, it is works cited. And again, like with all titles, no special formatting. And then we get into our sources. Now, you may notice as I scroll down, if there are multiple lines to a citation, we use what's called a hanging indent, where the first line is at the margin, but then every line under that within a single citation is over ½ an inch. That can be difficult to format as well. So I'm going to show you how to do that in Word, along with showing you how to format your header. Because again, that is like, that makes people want to throw their computers out the window. Once you know how to do it, it's simple. But if you don't know how to do it, it is so frustrating. And I'm going to show you what not to do in addition to what to do. The other thing that you'll notice is that they are in alphabetical order. You're only going to have to worry about alphabetizing 2, maybe 3 sources, maybe 4 if you have your 2 academic sources and then a definition and a scripture. I can't imagine you would have any more than that. So alphabetizing shouldn't be too difficult. Remember, you never alphabetize by an article. So let's say you don't have an author and your title begins with the word the or a or an. You don't alphabetize by that article, the a or an. You start with the word after that and alphabetize according to that. Okay. I think that's everything that you need to know about MLA formatting for now. And I know for some of you, this is a lot of information. So please reach out if you're confused, if you're lost. And remember that you do have the library website and you have the writing lab as well, if they have available appointments. I hope they still do, but I honestly don't know. Okay. And then before I go back over to Microsoft Word to show you how to do a couple of things, I'm going to show you one more thing, because if you look at this checklist, there are some things that are really important on it, and there are some things that I don't care about. So if you know the things I don't care about, then you can just forget about those and spend your time on other things. So this is, again, right from the Regent Library website, but I wanted to link it from here just for convenience. Okay, general formatting. This first one, I don't care about the font that you use. In a very strict world, you may have professors who care deeply about this. I am not one of them. Bless you. I actually don't really like Times New Roman as a font, so I don't care if you use it. I don't like it, so I don't use it. I like Calibri, which is the default in Microsoft Word, and the default is 11 point. So, you know, this, I'm not going to get heartburn over this one. The important thing here is use a font that's easy to read, unless your professor specifies otherwise, and then do what they want. But it needs to be something that's easy to read, and it needs to be a size that is easy to read without making it look like you chose a large font because you're trying to make it look like you wrote more than you actually wrote. I don't think anyone here is going to try to do that. That's more of a middle high school strategy. But I don't care about the font as long as it's readable and not a ridiculous size. My love, I am recording a video, so I need you to be very quiet. Okay, thank you. Okay, the margins, Word is going to do that for you. You don't have to think about margins. And then we've already talked about spacing. There are multiple ways to double space. One of them is on here, but it just doesn't get easier than holding control and hitting the number 2. So that's what I do. And then you are going to indent. And if you have a standard keyboard, you're going to use the tab key to indent. That will shift your cursor over 1/2 inch. And you'll be right where you need to be to start typing. Each paragraph should always be indented. You only are going to have one paragraph, so you only have to do that one time for this assignment. Okay, and then it does talk about your header, which we've already talked about, page number, your last name, but in the opposite order. And again, I'm going to show you how to do that in mere moments for those of you who don't know how to do it. Okay, we're not using a title page. You only use that if a professor asks for it, and that's generally going to be in a much, much longer piece of writing than what we're doing here. So ignore the title page portion. Citations, again, we've talked about this. This is actually very important. You're not going to use a block quote for this assignment because a block quote is 4 or more lines of text. That would be bananas for you to have a block quote in a 1-paragraph piece of writing. So you don't need to know about that for this class. You may need to know it for other classes. So just know, okay, I need to maybe one day know what a block quote is. And that just means a very long quote. Otherwise, you've seen how those are punctuated with your parenthetical citation. And then the works cited page, we've talked about this. We're going to talk about how to do a hanging indent. The title is works cited. Now, just because the title has quotation marks around it here, it doesn't have that on the actual works cited. Works cited, no bold, no italics, no underlining, no quotation marks. So just look at the sample paper. And then we've talked about ordering alphabetically, italicizing the titles of books and journals. But if you use the citation builder or copy and paste from the databases, when they give you the pre-done citation, that should be done for you, but something to just check for and make sure it's done. Place quotation marks around the titles of articles, essays, stories, chapters. Basically, long works are italicized, short works or works within, like sections within those long works, get quotation marks. And then cite the Bible on the works cited page. Some sources will tell you you don't need to. Regent wants you to. Okay, so handy little tool here in this checklist, but remember the things that you don't need to worry about. Okay, for those of you who know Microsoft Word, you know how to do a header, you know how to do a hanging indent. I'm going to say goodbye for now and have a wonderful week. For those of you who have no idea and you're feeling very anxious about it, stay here with me and we're going to go back into Microsoft Word and I'll show you how to do those things. Let me get a new window open and then bear with me. Okay. Let me share once more. Okay. So first thing, you're going to open up a brand new document in Microsoft Word. And we're going to, there are multiple ways to do this. The easiest for me when you want to do a header, the header means you're getting up into the portion of the paper, like literally when you're looking at this sheet of paper on the screen. We need to get up into the very top portion where the cursor doesn't normally go. So it's not going anywhere that you're actually typing your essay. And the easiest way for me to do that is to just double click at the very top of the paper. And you'll see it's now taken us into the header portion. You can just double click below that to get out of it. You can also insert, and then over here, there's header. And we don't want anything fancy in MLA formatting. So you can do it that way too, but for me, it's just so much easier to double click at the very, very top of that first page. Now, I'm going back to the home menu, the home tab up here at the top of the screen, because this is not where our header goes. We actually want it all the way over to the right side of the page. So if you look up here, there are these alignment buttons. There's align left, align center, align right, and that's the one that we want. And then I'm going to type the last name of my hypothetical student and hit the space one time. Now, here's the trickiest part. If I just type a 1 here, then what's going to happen is on every single page, it's going to say number 1, because whatever you do in the header, that's going to appear on every single page, which is why we use it for page numbering or pagination, because we want that to be on every page, but we don't want every page to say number 1. And our works cited page must also be numbered, which is why we have to do that here. Even though it's only 1 page of writing, we still need to number both the writing and the works cited. Okay, so now I'm going to go and delete that 1 because that's not going to get you what you want. So we're going to go back to the very top and we're going to select insert. So I'm not sure if my cursor shows up on the screen, but if you're not super familiar with Word, at the very top under the blue bar, you'll see file, home, insert, design, so on and so forth. Those are your different options there. We're going to select insert, just click on it one time. And now we do have to come over here all the way to the right almost, and you'll see where it says page number. Now, before I do that, you'll see where my cursor is. I've typed the last name, I've hit the space bar one time. That is where I want my page number. So I'm going to select page number and I want it in the current position where my cursor is right now. And again, it's more fun to be fancy, but this is MLA. We just want everything plain. So I'm going to choose plain number and there you go. And now again, I can double click below the header line and it'll take me out of there. And if I scroll down to page 2, oh, I deleted my page break. Now we're on page 2 and you can see that the pagination is correct. Now it says Smith 2, whereas on page 1, it said Smith 1. Now, the reason we do this, I'm going to show you some students, and I can always tell when they do this. Some students will just, they don't know how to do a header. So they'll, you know, why does it matter? I'm just gonna come over here and I'm just gonna type this. And then I'm gonna go to my second page. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go ahead and number my pages. And you know, who cares about a header? It doesn't matter. And I'm going to show you why it matters. Okay. So now it's in the regular area of the paper where I'm typing my thoughts. I'm going to type my works cited. I'm going to type my paragraph. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go ahead. All right, well, my page number is there. So I know I need to come down to the next line. Okay, first of all, I'm going to do my heading, not to be confused with the header. And it's going to be student's name, professor's name, course name, and date, which today is. I'm just going to do it like this. Okay. So let's scroll down. It's not working the way, oh, because I did a page break. That's why. Shoot. I'm actually working against the point I'm trying to make. Okay, let's come down here.
Hey, mommy's recording something, but
Dad, you want to come see this?
In real time, it's Super Bowl Sunday. It's getting very exciting around here. I don't like football, but my husband very much does. So we're having a little Super Bowl party for 4 tonight, our little family of 4. Okay, so I've typed my heading and I'm going to type my title. And then, okay, so if we scroll down here, look, it's moving farther down the page as I type. And I'm going to keep, okay, now again, we're going to hit the tab key to indent. And I didn't speak about that, but for those of you who are really new to Microsoft Word, when I got to this line for title, I came back up here and I chose my center alignment, which is all you need to do to type your title. And then you can see I came down the next line and then I went back over to the right alignment. Okay, so I'm going to hit tab to indent. This is the first line of my research paragraph. I'm going to write an amazing piece of work and impress the class. Okay, now this is an interesting thing about Word. So you see when I started typing, it looks like it's double spaced. It's technically not. It's actually the line spacing. And Microsoft Word did this several versions ago, and it kind of drives me up a wall. I don't care if you leave this like it is, or if you want to be a stickler and go and change your line spacing and then double space this along with everything else. Really, what matters here, I can just highlight what I've written, hold Control and hit 2. And now what I type from here on out is going to be double spaced. But once again, we're going to go down here and you can see that my page number has gotten bumped further and further and further down. The reason we don't do our page numbering this way is because whatever you do above it is going to affect. So let's say you've got it all perfect and you've got your page numbers where you want them, but you go back to edit your essay and you figure out you've made a mistake and you need to change something, it's going to bump your page number around. So don't get in the habit of doing it that way, because it really just is not the best way to number your pages. All right, I'm going to go delete this one too. Okay, so if your last name and page number aren't grayed out when you're typing, you haven't done it correctly. So make sure you use that header feature. Okay, now I'm going to give you another tip that's going to help you. Let's pretend I've written my full paragraph, which I clearly have not. All right, I'm going to come down the next line and I'm going to go to the insert menu at the top, right under that blue bar, and I'm going to select page break. And I'm going to go ahead and format my works cited. So again, I'm going to center, no special formatting. And then I'm going to align back to the left. I may have said right when I meant left earlier. I'm very tired, and I also have trouble between right and left, so forgive me if I did. Okay, so the reason we use a page break, let's say I come up, I'm going to type another hypothetical sentence until it bumps, nope, not bumps, down to the next line of the page. Okay. Now, before when I did that, it bumped my page numbering down, you remember? But because I used a page break, my works cited is always going to be exactly where I want it. If I were to type a paragraph long enough to come down to page 2, it would bump my works cited down to the top of page 3. So it always keeps this right where you want it. Page breaks are beautiful things. I highly recommend that students use them. Okay, but let's talk about that hanging indent. And I'm just going to do a hypothetical source here for the sake of time. And again, forgive me, I'm just going to go with my silly topics that I was using before. And that's a book title, so we're going to italicize it. Nope, that's wrong. Okay, and I have to make this longer so that I can show you. Because you don't need a hanging indent if your citation is only a single line. And things that I wanted to write about. There you go. Now it's 2 lines. Okay. There are 2 ways to do this. I don't know which one's going to be easier for you, so I'm going to show you both. What I typically do is I use the ruler. Now, if you don't see the ruler up here, I gotta get this toolbar out of the way. You can go to view, and you'll see right here that ruler is selected. So if you don't have your ruler selected and visible on the screen, you won't be able to do it this way. But you'll see on the ruler, there's what looks like an hourglass or a little arrow pointing down, a little arrow pointing up, and then a bar underneath. What those do, if you pull the bar underneath, it's gonna move your whole margin over, or your whole selected area over. If you pull just the top one, it's gonna move the top line, but not any line under that. If you move the bottom arrow, it's going to leave the top line where it is and move all subsequent lines over to where you put that arrow. This is the hanging indent that we want. So the really only trick here is that sometimes you think you're grabbing that bottom arrow and you're actually grabbing the little box and moving the whole thing. So it can be tricky to get just that arrow and move that over. That's the hanging indent that we want. So for every citation, the first line will be at the margin. Every subsequent line under that first line will be indented over 1/2 inch. That's your hanging indent. Okay, so I'm going to undo that and I'm going to show you the other way to do it. So now we can go to, I think it's paragraph. Okay, so you click on, let me show you that again, because again, I don't know if it's showing my cursor. In the paragraph options here, to the right of the word paragraph, there's a little arrow pointing down out of a box. So click on that and it'll bring up your paragraph menu. And where it says indentation, under the special options, you're going to choose hanging and then select OK. And that'll also do it. So again, it's whatever you feel more comfortable with, but there are 2 ways to do it. And then when you hit enter, it's going to still be indented. If you just hit the backspace, it's going to take you back over to the margin. And I'm going to double check and see if it kept that yet. No, it didn't. So you're going to have to redo that every time. That's why I like the ruler, because I don't have to keep opening up the menu, but you know how to do it now. I'm going to show you also, this is the classic what people try to do. Oops. in order to do the hanging indent. And this is why it doesn't work. It's so tempting to come over here and go, okay, well, I just need this line indented. So you put your cursor before and you hit tab, but it moves everything over. It doesn't work the way you want it to. And that's when it gets really frustrating. It's like, I don't know how to do this. So don't do it that way. Save yourself the frustration. All right, I think that is everything I promised to show you in Word. We've done our headers, we've done our works cited, we've done our hanging indent. And I've said a lot of things, and I feel like you've been watching for a really long time. So I'm going to tell you to have a wonderful week. Reach out if you have questions. I'm happy to help. And watch this video as many times as you need to until you become a master at how to do these annoying things in Microsoft Word. I will see y'all next time. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.